The purpose of a definition is to let you know what you mean by your words. Ayn Rand says that money is a medium of exchange and a store of value. But what is the definition of money? Well, let's look at it more in principle. How do you go about giving a definition? The way you give a correct definition is that you hold in mind prime examples of the thing you're trying to define. The purpose of a definition is to isolate the units, the reference of a concept, to distinguish them from everything else in the universe. So, when I say money, I'm talking about this, not that. The way you do that most efficiently was discovered by Aristotle. You begin with what's called a genus, a wider category that includes the examples that that are the units or reference of the concept you're trying to define, and their nearest relatives, the things that are close to them but not exactly the same. Then that's called the genus, and then you differentiate within the slightly wider category the things that are the units of the concept in question. So it's like saying Albany, New York. New York is the wider region. Albany is the narrower thing within New York. Except you would give an attribute to isolate the differentia, as it's called, the defining characteristic, from the other things in the genus. You wouldn't just name it. So what is the wider category of things of which money is the issue at hand, the thing we want to isolate and define? What is the wider category? Well, first, what would be some prime examples of money? Well, dollar bills. Then immediately we want to avoid being too narrow. So Israeli shekels, French francs, all the currencies of the world, but not just today. Let's go back in time. Gold coins, silver coins, maybe stamped with the face of an emperor of Rome. Now we've got some wide-ranging but simple examples of money. What would be the nearest relatives of money? I think it would be things like savings account, checks, loans, IOUs. There are means of exchange, potentially or actually. Money is actually a means of exchange. So can we then try out that the definition of money is a medium of exchange? That's the way it's normally thought of. But one of the tests for a definition, there are 5 or 6, depending upon how you count them, that are well known since Aristotle. One of them is that a definition has to state the fundamental being that characteristics which explains the greatest number of other characteristics. So what causes something to be a medium of exchange? Well, that it's universally desired. You can't use as a medium of exchange peacock tongues because very few people want that. So you need to use something that is universally valued. And what would it be that would be universally valued? It would be a certain commodity that had certain characteristics, that it wouldn't spoil, for instance, that you could easily transport enough of it to make a trade, that it is divisible. There's certain well-known characteristics, but the thing that is, Ayn Rand points out, that's the dominant one, is that it can store value. If you can't store value, you can't bring money, you can't hold money, because whatever, if you say you made the tomato your commodity money, you couldn't do that because the tomatoes would spoil. So I think the fundamental is a store of value, but you don't want to lose the main derivative thing. So it's a store of value used as a means of exchange, as a medium of exchange. And if I were discussing it further, I would go into why money replaces barter, if there's ever, in fact, historically been barter, aside from isolated cases, but there's a reason why money becomes to be dominant over one-to-one exchanges of shoes for corn and apples for bricks. It's because it permits economic calculation. Apples couldn't do it because they're perishable, but bricks could. But having one store of value to use as a medium of exchange allows for economic calculation. You know the price of things. Whereas if everything were, well, this is 5 bricks, I can get it for 5 bricks, or 4 loaves of bread, or 2 fish, it would wreak havoc in your ability to plan and budget and know whether you're making money or losing money, because there'd be many monies and they would be fluctuating against each other all the time. So that it is a store of value universally desired, that's a medium of serves as a medium of exchange, I think is the definition. But I have not worked that out, and you would be best to consult the better economists, such as Ludwig von Mises, if you don't know his name and work, or going back earlier, Carl Menger is probably the best economist of all time. Adam Smith is also one of the greats, but Carl Menger founded the Austrian school, of which Ludwig von Mises is the 3rd generation. So you go to the source, in effect. So I think the important thing to know is, what is the purpose of a definition and how do you do it? The purpose of a definition is to let you know what you mean by your words. That is, which things in reality you're referring to, and to let you know in as economical and quick a fashion as possible. You don't want to have to read an encyclopedia article to know what money is. It's store of value used as a medium of exchange. Yeah, I know what that is. But in order to do that most efficiently, it has to have a genus and a differential. So exchange is really the genus, means of exchange. And that would cover the checking accounts and the savings account and so forth. And the differentia it's a store of value used as a medium of exchange. That's not a great answer because I've never thought of it before, but you see the method. That's more important than the specific answer I give. The method is you go back and forth between the units in reality, the dollars, the gold coins, and so forth, to the abstract identification you give of it, and you make sure you've got the fundamental.